The cyclopes were one-eyed, human-like monsters most known from Greek mythology, such as the Odyssey. However, one-eyed cyclops-like creatures appear in other cultures' mythology as well, including Celtic, Slavic, and Japanese. This page will teach you about some of the Cyclops mythology, as well as Cyclops symbols, meanings, and more. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new video on the channel. Today, we're going to talk about the origins and mythos of the Cyclops. Before we get started with the video, don't forget to smash the like button, share the video, and subscribe to the channel. Now let's get started. The Cyclopes, as previously stated, were human-like monsters. Their most noticeable characteristic, however, was that they only had one eye, which was positioned in the center of their foreheads. And whereas Cyclopes in Greek, Celtic, and Slavic mythology were giants, Cyclops-like beings in Japanese mythology were the size of human toddlers. Furthermore, depending on who was narrating the narrative, representations of the Cyclopes' mental acuity and other personality attributes altered. Historians believe Mesopotamia was the first civilization, followed by ancient Greece and beyond. In Greek cosmology, Gaia was the Cyclops' mother, while Uranus was his father. Poseidon was the father of a Cyclops named Polyphemos, while a nymph named Thuso was the mother in later mythology. Special powers include sheer strength, blacksmithing, music, and psychic ability. The term Cyclops is taken from the Greek word cyclopes, which is derived from the words kyklos. These words' roots may be known to you because they exist in a variety of common English phrases, including cycle, bicycle, and optometrist. In English, the plural for Cyclops is usually spelled cyclopes. The plaque depicts a warrior deity restraining a monster with one hand while stabbing it with a big blade with the other. The head of the creature is formed like a sun with 12 points or rays. What is most remarkable, at least in terms of this story, is that the creature only has one eye in the center of its forehead. The relic is known to archaeologists as God killing the Cyclops. The Cyclops-like monster was thought to be a fire demon because of the rays protruding from its head. Others believe the Babylonian monster is the Mesopotamian deity Tiamat, who assumes various forms including a sea goddess. The plaque, however, is devoid of writing. As a result, the complete story remains a mystery. Paleontologists have another idea regarding the origins of the Cyclopes mythology, or, at the very least, one of the reasons for their persistence. Sea levels plummeted during the Pleistocene epoch, which lasted from 2.6 million to 11,700 years ago, allowing certain terrestrial species to cross the Mediterranean Sea. African elephant ancestors trekked or swam across the sea to Europe, with some landing on what is now the island of Sicily. As sea levels rose again, an elephant population remained on the island. With less food available over time and generations, the elephant species shrank in size. They evolved into pygmy elephants in Sicily, weighing roughly 250 pounds and standing only 3 feet tall. Prior to the arrival of humans around 11,000 years ago, pygmy elephants had no predators. They were eventually hunted to extinction by humans. Some of their bones, though, survived in caves where early people had devoured them. Some of these bones were discovered thousands of years later by the Greeks. They would have handled a skull roughly twice the size of a human skull if they had discovered a pygmy elephant skull. The pygmy elephant skull, on the other hand, had a big hole in the middle of the forehead where the elephant's trunk had been. Because most Greeks were unlikely to have seen a living elephant, we can presume they did not conclude that the skull belonged to that species. Without knowing what kind of species the skull belonged to, it's understandable that the Greeks concluded the hole was for a single eye socket. Many of us first encountered the Cyclopes in Greek mythology. While the Theogony is roughly 2,700 years old, the stories of the Cyclopes, like the other Greek mythology, are likely considerably older. According to Greek cosmology, the universe was nothing but chaos before the world was created. Gaia, the first female deity, and 2 male deities were formed from this turmoil. Tartarus represented the pit or underworld, and Eros represented the personification of love. Gaia had children without the assistance of a mate. Uranus, the deity of the sky and heavens, was one of her children. Gaia and Uranus then had children. They created the 12 Titan gods as well as monster gods such as the 3 hecatoncheires and the 3 cyclopes. As a result, the original Cyclopes and their siblings were very old characters in Greek mythology. The 3 Cyclopes children of Gaia and Uranus were named Arges and Brontes, who were thunderstorm gods, and Steropes, who was a lightning storm deity. According to tradition, Uranus despised his monstrous children and blamed Gaia for their existence. As a result, Uranus resolved to imprison them all on the Earth, which also happened to be their mother, Gaia. Gaia was in a lot of agony since she had spirited monster children living inside her, so she enlisted the help of her other offspring to exact revenge on Uranus. Cronus, Gaia's youngest Titan son, promised to assist her. He castrated Uranus with a saber and flung his testicles into the sea. The sea froth from the cut testicles gave birth to Aphrodite, the goddess of love. Because the Cyclopes were imprisoned in the underworld, they needed to devise ways to pass the time. So, utilizing their storm powers, they began to forge metal from the Earth's molten core. They also began to construct using stone. The Cyclopes gained strength and polished their skills. Meanwhile, back on Earth's surface, Cronus had a son named Zeus. Uranus, however, remained powerful as the deity of the sky. Cronus, still bitter at Uranus for mistreating his mother, plotted to depose him and install Zeus in power. But he couldn't accomplish it on his own. So he released his 3 Cyclopes siblings in exchange for their assistance in overthrowing their vengeful father. The Cyclopes' winning combination of smithing abilities and storm god DNA allowed them to construct Zeus's all-powerful weapons, thunder and lightning bolts. Zeus was able to dethrone Uranus and become the supreme god of the universe with the assistance of the Cyclope. After the Trojan War, the hero, warrior Odysseus attempts to return home to Ithaca with his fleet of ships in the Odyssey. He and his crew had stopped at the land of the Lotus Eaters. Odysseus, on the other hand, had to drag his troops away because they were consuming lotus leaves with the locals, and the narcotic effects were making his soldiers lose any desire to depart, let alone work building a ship. The island of Cyclopes was the next destination on Odysseus' journey after he successfully dragged his troops back to the ships and returned his fleet to sea. The guys boarded the ship and started off to find food and other supplies. Odysseus and his crew were astounded by the wealth of the area as they explored, especially since the natives, who happened to be Cyclopes, didn't seem to accomplish much in terms of farming and cultivation. The men came across the cave of a cyclops named Polyphemos while exploring. Odysseus offered the one-eyed giant some bread and cheese from their provisions since he seemed nice. Polyphemos then invited Odysseus and his soldiers to lunch with him in his cave. Once the men were inside the cave, Polyphemos trapped them by blocking the entrance with a big boulder. Polyphemos went out to tend to his sheep flock, leaving the men stranded within. The real terror began when Polyphemos returned to the cave and ate 2 of Odysseus' men. The Cyclops' nightmare behavior became a pattern, as he would leave the cave with the soldiers trapped inside every morning, tend his sheep, then return in the evening to consume 2 more of Odysseus' men. Odysseus created a scheme out of concern for his men. He realized he couldn't simply murder Polyphemos since he needed the Cyclops' assistance to move the enormous boulder so he and his soldiers could flee. Odysseus offered Polyphemos the best wine from his supplies when he returned to the cave in the evening. Polyphemos drank all of the wine greedily and became inebriated quickly. He asked Odysseus what his name was now that he was drunk. Odysseus responded, "My name is Nobody." "Very well, Nobody," Polyphemos responded, "for sharing your wine. I will eat you last." Polyphemos then passed out. Odysseus seized a massive stick and drove it into the Cyclops' eye, blinding him. Polyphemos awoke in agony, screaming. He yelled so loudly that the other Cyclopes on the island could hear him. When they called out to Polyphemos and asked what was wrong, he replied, "Nobody has harmed me." The other Cyclopes did not come to his rescue since they concluded that nothing was wrong. Polyphemos couldn't catch any more males that night because he was now blind. He relocated the boulder the next morning so he could take his sheep out into the fields. He felt each sheep's back to check that they were actually sheep he was releasing and not any of his human prisoner. Odysseus and his men, unseen by the Cyclops, sneaked out of the cave by clinging to the underbellies of the sheep. Odysseus couldn't resist another shot at Polyphemos once he and his soldiers were securely back on their ships and sailing away. Cyclops, if any mortal man should inquire about the shameful blinding of your eyes, say that Odysseus, the sacker of cities, blinded it. The son of Laertes, whose home is in Ithaca, he cried. Enraged by being misled and then embarrassed, Polyphemos begged his father, Poseidon, the god of the sea, to avenge him. As a result, many of the subsequent problems that Odysseus and his crew endured were attributed to Poseidon's anger at insulting his son. That's a wrap on the video. I hope you liked it. If you did, let me know by giving it a thumbs up and do not forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you next time.